Today we're going to talk about why the 944 was actually better than the 911. All right, so we're going to get started here. But first of all, let's get past the elephant in the room. Why am I wearing this hat and not a Porsche hat? Well, every time I go to the dealer, at the Porsche dealer, and ask for a hat, they don't have any, or they have that weird martini hat. I just want one with a logo on it that says Porsche. Apparently, it's impossible here at my dealership to get one. So then you think, wait a second, but you have an AMG hat on. You don't have an AMG Mercedes. You have a CLS 550. True, but I do have the AMG package on my CLS 550. So I have the rims, the exhaust, the paddle shifters, whatever. So yes, I am allowed. I can wear this hat. It's okay. I'm not posing. But getting back to the point, really? Am I smoking crack? The 944 better than the 911? It's still up for debate, but let me give you some information that will help you to really think a little bit better about the 944 and maybe drive yours around with pride or actually get looking for one. So one thing, you would think we're going to compare specifically the G Series 911 that ran from 1973 through 1988 to the 924 and 944 together because the production years are pretty similar. Except for we're shorting the 924 and 944 about 3 years because production started in 1976 and ran through 1988. Now, during that time, you know, you had all these different Porsche models, the 911, the 911 SC, the 911 Cabriolet, you had the Widowmaker, the 930. Which do you think had more production numbers? Is it close? Well, in actuality, the 911 during that time produced, I think, 198,000 units. Took me some looking to find it. Wikipedia wouldn't say it. It was kind of interesting. So do you think the 924, 944 beat it? Well, the 944 alone, if we're taking into account the turbo and everything together, had 171,000 units sold. Now, together with the 924, you won't believe this, it was actually 320,000 units together. So with 3 less years of production, the 944 killed the 911, okay? So then we talk about, okay, yeah, but it was more expensive. But I want you to understand the significance of this car and the history that it has behind it and why Porsche is today what it is. Because remember, in that fateful time when Porsche was getting ready to cancel the 911 in 1981, you know, someone went out and drew a line across and saying production's not going to end on the 911 because it was an icon, not because it was the better car. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm actually going to talk to you more so about feature sets and things. We're not going to get involved in performance because it's irrelevant at this point, but I'll have you know it's very close. You both have 5-speed shifters. There was just a little bit different in shifting points to 60 miles per hour that made the 944 slightly slower, about a second slower. But let's get to some other details. So I'm going to start right here. You look, you say, okay, what are we looking at, JR? What are we saying? What are we looking at? Okay, look at the distance between the two seats. It's actually pretty decent. These are the same seats that you would find in a 911. They're not smaller, but you have this nice thing called an armrest and a place to put your arm in between them. And also, I want to show you something, one other thing, okay? So I want to show you something real quick. When I'm sitting in this car, I have room for a passenger also. So I'm about 6'2", 230 pounds or so, okay? I have decent sized shoulders. If someone sits right here, we're not rubbing shoulder to shoulder. So me and my buddy can ride in the car and not feel like we're cramped together. It's much different than when you watch The Smoking Tire and you see Matt Farah review a 911. He's got somebody in the car and the guy over there is sitting with his arms together as close as possible because they're going to hit each other. It doesn't happen in this car because it's wider. It has more space. Look at this space that doesn't exist. So uncomfortable. Oh, no space at all. And while we're here, I want to show you something else very quickly. Look up there. See all that roof? See all that space? Yeah. You know, it has a big sunroof that you can tilt or just pop totally out, which is what you see behind you there. Now, 911s did have the option where you can get a Targa, which actually opened up a good, decent amount of space and actually removed this side right here. You see with the iconic silver that they had. Beautiful car. You guys used to hang surfboards out of them. But this is another great option, and I just love that fact of having that area open and right behind it, look how big that window is. And then also, you know, much different than a 928, it doesn't have those those bodywork or those other pieces that cut the window up into three. It's just one nice, big, huge piece of glass. Gives you a really airy feel. I'm going to show you something else. Matt Farah, and there's been others to comment, and sorry, Matt, if I'm bringing this to your attention too much. I'm pretty sure you will never watch my channel. But he always complains about this particular steering wheel. He says how ugly it is and how terrible it is. And it's just, you know, one of the banes of the existence. Every time someone switches it, he's like, oh, thank God for you doing so. But here's a really great thing about the steering wheel, and this cluster especially. Much different from the 911. I can see all my gauges through it. You know, if you remember, the 911 has a much flatter surface, and there's gauges that sit right in these areas, and you got to hunt around and look. So for visibility's sake, I got to say, you know, I'm going to show you in a second, but this may actually be the better option. In the 911, you can see that the gauges are partially blocked by the wheel. Again, bad design. One other thing, the shifter, right? I love this shifter over the 911. Why? Because for one thing, it's closer to the wheel, your hand to wheel. And then also, you don't have these very, very long ratios. Now, granted, it's not like it's very tight compared to anything you drive today. But the ratio, the gear to shifting, is so much more positive and gives you so much more feedback. That could be a subjective, but to me, I definitely love the closer relationship between these two areas. So again, you can see in this 911, look at the distance between the top of the knob and the steering wheel. That's a lot of space. As you can see here, look at these pedals. Much different from the 911. They are hinged up. And when they're hinged up like that, you just, to me, I get a much more solid, great feel of what's going on, especially, you know, the clutch pedal. So if you look here, you know, I have plenty of leg room being a tall guy. And it just, there's so much positive reinforcement. And look at the spacing I have between everything. I'm not crunched up over here to the side. I have a good rest pedal. One of the best, let me tell you something. This rest pedal and these 944s are amazing. I've been in cars much bigger, much more luxurious. Nothing compares. Even my Mercedes, just the angle and where my leg stays, it's just a perfect resting area. I can drive for quite a bit of time. One word, uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Lastly, let's talk about, and I'm sorry I haven't got a chance to clean this up here, but this interior. I love this interior design. Just how clean it is, and then how this piece, the center console, matches up to that. If you've followed me on Instagram, you see the post that I have about the Audi A8 and how it took this design and stole it. But this design, again, is just a beautiful flowing design. I remember when I was about 16 or 17 years old, I sat my first 944, and I sat in the later model like this, and I fell in love. I said, this has had to be one of the simplistic, most beautiful interiors I've ever sat in, and I still feel like that to this day. All right, let's get on to the engine here, okay? So, first of all, I'm apologizing because my engine's dirty. Why is it dirty? Because I've been driving the heck out of this car for the last few days. I've been traveling about 70 miles a day for the last 4 or 5 days while I'm waiting for my Mercedes to get some body work done because somebody ran into my car. But anyway, getting back to this engine. So people think, oh, you know, the 944 is so slow, it's not fast, it's a momentum car. But I want you to understand something. Only up until 1983, the 911 SC only had 180 horsepower. This engine produces 150 horsepower. That's a 30 horsepower difference. Okay, you say, but 30 horsepower, hey. You got to understand at the same time, this 944 was lighter. I will repeat, lighter than the 911. I think this is quoted at it being something around 2778. The 911 was 2855, something like that. So 100 pounds, give or take. Still, it's a lot closer than you think. Now, I said something in the beginning before about the 0 to 60 times, the 911 being a second faster. The reason for it is because the gearing in the 944 has it shifting to third gear right at 58 miles per hour, which of course slows the 0 to 60 time. Again, when you're doing actual road racing and real driving and wanting to be enthusiastic about what you're doing, you're in second and third gear, fourth gear anyway. You're not doing just a 0 to 60 run. That's a terrible stat to look at. And then again, while we're looking at this engine, why it's so wonderful, look at this. Look at what I'm doing. Look where I can get to. It's accessible. You can change your spark plugs. You can drain your fluids. You can get to your distributor cap very easily. You can take most of this engine apart without having to have a lift, without having to put the car up in the air, and it's enjoyable. So when you look at this engine, when you look at where everything is, your reference sensors are probably the hardest thing to get to, which is in the far back. I put a video out on that. You can replace all that. Cruise control sitting right over there coming across the top. And then you have your accesses. Here's your fluid levels right here. The accessibility, the ability to change and do what you want at low cost makes this engine, this setup better. And we're not even going to talk about handling. We know that the 911 has really great characteristics and feel once you get used to the way that it drives, how you can set up a corner before you go into it. But the better handling car, the car that is most predictable, that's going to give you the most confidence, is this engine, which again I'm going to show you, sits mostly behind the front wheels with its transmission in the back to give you that 50-50, near 50-50 weight distribution. So one thing I forgot to show you while I was under the hood is to look over at the area where the brake reservoir was. Well, why? Well, 911s and 924, 944s all have brake fluid. But off of that brake fluid, the 924 and 944 have something really cool, which is called the master cylinder and the slave cylinder for your hydraulic clutch. That's right. So much different from the 911 SC during that time frame. They were using cables. Cables work. They don't give you the best feel all the time. They can stretch. They need to be replaced. This had a hydraulic system which went into effect much later, showing this car had some advancements over the 911. That's right. I couldn't say it better myself. Now remember, the ultimate cool Porsche, the 935 slant nose of the 80s, was what everybody thought was just so delicious. This kind of has the same feel. Maybe I'm stretching a little bit, but let's be honest. That car looked a little bit strange because the nose was so short from the 911, it was cut low. I'm not talking bad about it. Believe me, it's one of my hero cars. I'll never talk bad about the 935 slant nose. But when you look at how this is made and you see the longer door, the longer fender here, this looks so much more integrated and so much more cool. And I'm telling you, I mean, every day people constantly are telling me how much they love my car. And let's talk about visibility. Look at the windows. Look at how small this C-pillar is. It's tiny. And then look how this piece of glass starts wrapping around here, giving you viewable area out this way and wraps all the way around. I mean, your visibility out the rear is insane. Now, a lot of people say, I don't care about looking out the rear, but let me tell you something. When you're driving an older car like this with people crazy on the road, you have to be ready to protect yourself against any situation. And that curved rear window, which I talk about, is much different again from the 928, because the 928 actually had those body lines in here and it separated the windows into three. Not terrible, not horrible, but I just think this is so much cleaner. I mean, look at that. And while we're talking about the front and body work, what the 944 lacks in humps here, like on the 911 SE, it has humps here. See, many people can't see these lines. They don't really see them. They don't really play out well when you're looking at pictures on eBay. But I mean, look at that hump that pulls out there. And then look at this. Look at this nice hip angle. Now, of course, nothing's going to match the hips of a 911. But you think about it, you have to get like the Widowmaker. You have to get some of the nicer ones to get those real big fenders that sit out. This has some really, really beautiful angles. Now, this is the car that made me go with the green. You can look from the back. You can judge it and form your own opinion. So we're going to get into the meat of this real thing about the 924, 944 series. Without it, Porsche would not exist. Huh? Remember, these were the first water-cooled cars. What is every Porsche today? Water-cooled. The production numbers, 320,000 units, proved, and we're not talking about the 928 either, proved that this car could work and propelled other models of Porsche forward. You had, again, eventually the 968 that they produced. But then after that, you had the Porsche Boxster water-cooled, the 996, first 911 version of water-cooled cars. So when you look in the road and you see your Panameras, when you see your Cayennes, when you see your Macans, all those cars came from the proven technology, the decision that was made in the 944 to do it. So, you know, it's funny because a lot of times when I'm in the road, I'm driving, I get tons of compliments and every 911 guy, they act like I don't exist. Every Cayenne people, I guess, I don't know if they're really Porsche people or not. I would assume so. I hope so. These people, like, they don't really pay homage to or really understand what this car is. People say, oh, it's a cheap Porsche. Think about your 944. Your average 944 is incredibly neglected. It's been through several owners, and yet they still run, and they can be resurrected. Remember what this car looked like. And it's a daily driver now with virtually no money at all. So when I talk about the 944 and I talk about the 924 and the front engine water cooled, you really have to take the time to compare the numbers, to look at what the car offers, to understand what you want in a car, and then you can really say who's better. But for me, for many smart journalists, automotive journalists, and people that I've talked to, the 944 is the better Porsche. All right, sorry for this rant. Hope you enjoyed. Take care.